All right, so this question is asking us to solve the polynomial equation, and there are so many different ways you can do this question. One way that you can do this is you can go through factoring it, and the nice thing about factoring is it is easier in some regards, but it will not always work. So if they give you something you can factor, by all means you can try to factor it, but if for some reason that doesn't work, then you can go through synthetic division. So I could test zeros, or I could use my graphing calculator to find out where one of the zeros are and then reduce the polynomial that way. So this particular question, if you try to factor it, you're going to see that it does factor out very nicely. So let's go through that. First thing with factoring is you always ask yourself, is there a GCF? And again, you look at this 3, -1, -21, 7, there's no GCF. So then the next step is to say, how many terms do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. And so because I have 4 terms, I'm going to go through the grouping method. So I draw a line, I look at the first 2 terms, and I say from these first 2 terms I can bring out a common x squared. So when I divide by x squared here, I'll be left with 3x, and when I divide by x squared here, I'll be left with -1. Now, for grouping to work, if I get a 3x minus 1 here, I've got to somehow find a way to get 3x minus 1 from the second group. So if there's ever any question about how to have that happen, what you can do is you can look at what you have. So what I currently have is -21x, and I want to have a 3x. So if I take -21x divided by 3x, that tells us that I need to bring out a -7. So by bringing out the -7, I will get the 3x minus 1 as the other factor. Now, from there, what I do is I say now from both of these groups, I have a GCF of 3x minus 1. So I can bring the 3x minus 1 out as a GCF. And when I do that, I will then be left with this x squared and -7 as the 2 remaining terms. All right, so now that it's factored, I set each of the factors equal to 0. So I set 3x minus 1 equal to 0 and x squared minus 7 equal to 0. Now the first equation is a linear equation because the highest power is 1, so I just add 1 and divide by 3. The second equation is a quadratic equation because the highest power is 2. So I can do the factoring method, quadratic formula, or I can notice that because of the fact that it's x squared, or can be written as x squared is equal to a number, really I could use the square root method. So I'm going to add to both sides. Then I have x squared is equal to 7. To undo that 2 power, I'll have to take the square root. And remember that this 2 power means that we have 2 answers. So if I just take the square root, I only have 1 answer. So to get the 2 answers, I add plus or minus square root of 7. And that gives us now 2 answers from the x squared equation. So these are my zeros. This is my solution, or the zeros to the function x is equal to 1/3 and plus or minus square root of 7.